Hello and welcome back to the channel, everybody. Today we're going to be going over 5 builds for every situation for the Driller class. We've already done this for Gunner and Scout, so let's do Driller. So out of these 5 builds, our very first one is the Fun build, and for this I chose to go with the Snowball Cryo Cannon. This lets you have cryo grenades more or less with your cryo cannon, so when you hit your reload button, this works the same way on console or PC, you hit your reload button, you'll fire out a snowball that hits an area, explodes, and then can freeze everything, or at least apply cold to everything. Larger enemies will be frozen slower, and smaller enemies will be frozen basically instantly. This is also a really good overclock if you want to take it on Bacteria Plague, because you will kill basically everything in a group when you shoot this. I think the only exception to this can be Goo Bombers. I don't think they freeze instantly, at least if they're on the outside of the snowball. I think if you hit them directly with the snowball, it will still freeze them though. But even on the outside of the snowball, if you're hitting regular Bacteria or Trijaws or Brundleflies, you will freeze them and kill them instantly. So that is really good. Downside to this one is that you lose out on ammo, which I just build for more ammo so I can use it more often. And of course, you don't need to use Snowball if there's not really a reason to. You can always just use the regular Cryo Cannon to freeze things. For a secondary weapon, I paired this with Heat Pipe for the EPC, which I have really been liking a lot recently. And I built this just for EPC mining. I find it super fun to use for that. It is very difficult to get used to just EPC mining in general, even more so with Heat Pipe, because Heat Pipe comes out very fast, especially the way that I build it where we have extra charge speed. So it comes out really fast and you have a very small margin to where you can successfully do it, otherwise you will overheat the gun and it won't work. So it is kind of a fun little mini game to get used to, and then most of the time I'm just using the cryo cannon for basically everything else. The EPC I'm only using to either mine with or to potentially hit spitters on the walls, acid spitters, web spitters, or sometimes Bacteria that just insist on flying further away, spitballers as well. So this build does have limitations. It's not perfect at everything, but it is a super fun build to run. Our second build that we're going to be running is a single target damage build, and for Driller there's some interesting choices for single target. I decided to take the Corrosive Sludge Pump as my primary weapon, loaded with Sludge Blast. Sludge Blast gives you an acid shotgun. This deals really high damage towards single targets, especially Dreadnoughts. The Sludge Pump does really good against Dreadnoughts because you don't need to be hitting them in the weak spot, you can just hit them anywhere. So firing this directly into him does massive damage per second. It does really good against any big enemies, Praetorians, Oppressors. Can also do pretty well against crowds, but once they're at a distance. If you're shooting it very up close to crowds, it doesn't do as well. And the Shotgun Blast just kind of hits the first thing and stops wherever it is. So for secondary, I decided to take Explosive Reload for the Sabata. This is another really high single target damage overclock. Lets you have embedded detonators for the Sabata, so you get good burst damage, you get good damage per second. It can work well against Dreadnoughts, but be sure to be using it when the Dreadnoughts armor is off of them. If you're using it when they still have armor on, it won't be doing the explosives. It doesn't affect their armor then. It also works really well against Flying Rocks. This build is a bit heavy into the single target damage and doesn't do incredibly well against crowds. It can do okay, but it can also be a little bit ammo hungry. You might not want to pair both of these in combination, and there is other options for single target. You could go with Ice Spear for the Cryo Cannon, that works really well. You could go with Face Melter with the Flamethrower, it has short range, but it's still really good. You could go with Volatile Impact Mixture with the Sludge Pump, which is a really strong overclock, and I really debated using it here, but I talk about that one pretty often. I wanted to highlight Sludge Blast here. All of those are really good, and for secondaries, you could also go with Heavy Hitter with the EPC, that works pretty well, or Overcharger, depending on if you want to use it for crowds or for single targets. And with the microwave gun, it's usually just getting the thermal shock status effect. You could take Blistering Necrosis with it, and then also take something like Ice Spear, which hits extremely hard because you can put a blister on something and then shoot Ice Spear into it. That's a really strong combo too if you want really high single target damage, and it will also give you some pretty good crowd control. I would consider that more of a general build, so plenty of options there. And speaking about options, our third build is going to be a CC build, so a crowd control build for Driller, and it's really easy to make a crowd control Driller because basically all of your primaries have a lot of crowd control. For this one, I decided to go with Sticky Fuel for the Flamethrower, and then I took Diffusion Ray on the microwave gun. I might have actually taken Mega Power Supply in the footage that you're seeing here, so just ignore that. It should work the same with Diffusion Ray. Sticky Flames lets you have fire damage that lasts a very long time. You can be super ammo efficient with it. It doesn't take very much ammo to kill entire crowds of enemies with it. Its one downside is that it's fire, so it doesn't work well against Dreadnoughts. I wouldn't really recommend taking this one on a Dreadnought mission, but on every other mission type it should work just fine. And then Diffusion Ray lets you hit multiple enemies and can potentially trigger the thermal shock status effect, which is what the whole point of this build is, so that we can have even more crowd control, as well as you can hit multiple enemies with Diffusion Ray, so you can just use it by itself. It's really good for clearing up swarmers or jellyfish, but you have tons of options for crowd control in this way. Basically everything besides Face Melter from the Flamethrower will work for this. Basically everything on the Cryo Cannon will work for this, and basically everything with the Sludge Pump will also work for this in terms of primary weapons, because all of them do really quite well against crowds. Secondaries, a little bit more limiting because the Sabata doesn't have anything in particular that makes it great against crowds, but it's not going to be a terrible option. You could take Persistent Plasma with the EPC, that one works really well. Or Overcharger, that one's another great one. And of course you can take basically anything with the microwave gun because it is also quite good at crowd control. Moving on to our fourth build, we have an ammo build. So how much ammo can we stack on this? And for this I decided to take the Cryo Cannon once again as our primary weapon, with our overclock being the improved thermal efficiency. Improved thermal efficiency just gets you more ammo, which is fantastic for the Cryo Cannon. I built it for even more ammo, so it takes a very long time to actually run out of ammo with the Cryo Cannon built like this. It's a pretty solid weapon by itself. But then I also paired it with the Mega Power Supply for the microwave gun, so we have even more ammo. And then I built this for thermal shock, so once you freeze something, you can thermal shock it, and you'll basically kill any normal enemy, grunts, guards, slashers, anything like that you'll kill very fast with very minimal effort. And you can always use the microwave gun at longer ranges to take out things like spitters or to take out things like jellyfish and swarms. This build can still do decently well against big enemies too. It can do well against dreadnoughts. For this you probably want to take like impact axes so you can freeze them and then hit them with the impact axe, because it's not great to be thermal shocking them. They don't take a ton of damage from that. It can still work, but something like impact axes will do more damage per second. So it doesn't really have much of a weakness, but it's definitely more specialized towards just crowd control overall and just having tons of ammo. It took me forever to run out of ammo with this build when I was running it. And then our last build is a general purpose build, and for this I decided to take the Corrosive Sludge Pump once again, take Disperser Compound as our primary weapon, and then Heavy Hitter as our secondary. So the Disperser Compound gives us better AoE damage, more damage over time, or at least more sludge puddles, so we can potentially cover more of an area and do more damage to more things. That's going to be our primary crowd control, although you can just tap fire this and shoot it normally, and that'll do decent single target damage. And then we have Heavy Hitter on the EPC, built for more damage so we can light our sludge on fire, but also so that we can just hit things at a distance better. So if we have things like Mactera or we have spitters, we can take them out fairly quick. You're still going to struggle with certain ranged enemies. Driller kind of does, like menaces and spitballers, because they're pretty tanky and take a while to kill, but you can deal with them over time, so there is options there too. There's a lot of options for general purpose. This is the one that I picked, but feel free to experiment with other ones. Basically anything with the flamethrower will work for general purpose. Cryo Cannon has quite a few good ones, like its clean overclock and tune cooler. And then the Sludge Pump also has great ones like volatile impact mixture or hydrogen ion additive that works really well. So these are 5 builds for Driller. Tell me what your favorite builds are for each of these type of builds. Next up, we're going to be taking a look at Engineer, and that should be a lot of fun. Thanks for watching this. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will talk to you next time. Bye-bye!